It's not crooked?
No.
Why does it look? No. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, wa ala Muhammadan, wa ala salam. All praise is due to Allah, Rabb, cherisher and sustainer of all the worlds. May peace and blessings be upon the noble messenger, his family and companions. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an Muhammadan Rasulullah. None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. This is week number 6, and we'll be reading from chapter 4 of the characteristics of the called, or the person you're calling. When you start to make da'wah, the first thing you need to do is to keep your objectives foremost. That means in front of you. Conversion or clear communication. Before entering into the main topic, I'd like to make 3 introductory remarks. The first of which is that we have to keep in mind that our primary objective in da'wah is not to convert the individual or make him to revert to Islam. The conversion is in the hands of Almighty Allah. He said in the Quran, "Indeed, you cannot guide whom you love, but Allah guide whom He wills." Surah Al-Qasas 28:56. Our job is the same one that was given to all the prophets and messengers, and given to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It is to convey the message clearly, as Allah said. The only obligation on the messenger is to give the clear message. Surah An-Nur 24:54. Therefore, we have to constantly remind ourselves, whenever we are in a discussion with an individual or a group, or giving a lecture to a group, that we are not there to win an argument or debate. Our goal is to make sure they properly understand the true message of Islam in its pristine, pure form. It may be possible to convince them in an hour or a day, or to change the course of their whole life. But at least they should understand the reality of what you are calling, to the oneness of Allah, the finality of Muhammad ﷺ, his prophethood, the certainty of the day of judgment, etc. Therefore, what is most important regarding those being called to Islam is that the message should be crystal clear. There's only one God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Listen before you speak. The second point is that we should strive to listen before we speak, to understand the other party and the other side before we explain our points of view. As in the weeks past, I have explained to all of you that sometimes listening is the most important. Introduce yourself, but let the other person, or the other persons, if it's a group, to introduce themselves. Sometimes you will find a clearer path. You may have a way you want to give your speech, but by talking to these people and understanding what they already know and what they don't know, you will find an easier way to talk to them. Sometimes your speech is not even the right path. You have to go to something else. Many times when we are in a da'wah situation, either because we've already heard their arguments before and or know their opinions are wrong anyway, so what is the point to listening to them? Some people get in this frame of mind. They don't want to listen to other people because they heard the same questions over and over and over again. Each person is an individual. Each person's question is important to him. Whether the question is important to you or not doesn't really make any difference. You're there to answer his questions. Jesus is not the Son of God because of reasons 1, 2, 3, or 4. Furthermore, the Bible says, and the Quran says, and the Christian scholar said this, and Paul said that. But the person you are telling that may not be interested in because he does not believe that Jesus is literally the Son of God to start with. Or he or she may be interested in some other issue, like why are Muslim men allowed to have 4 wives? They may have some confusion about formal prayers in Islam, why we pray a certain way, why we pray at a certain time, why do we make purification before we do it, why Muslims have to pray 5 times a day. So we should take some time out and listen to the person before we begin our discussion, and allow further time during the discussion to listen to them, Sometimes people only have one question and it has nothing to do with the 2 hours that you plan to speak. So if you don't take time to listen to them, you don't know what they want to know, and you're wasting your time and theirs. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. The third and final point, to put ourselves in their shoes. After discussions, people generally do not remember what was actually said. The particular words that were used, the precise issues were discussed, but how it was said, the way the words were used, and the issues presented. They do not really remember what we say, yet we spend so much time bringing points and explaining proofs, because this is a style we have developed in learning Islam. Consequently, we want to use texts from the Quran and Hadith to prove our points. However, if we stop and think for a moment, we know that the most of the non-Muslims whom we give da'wah to do not understand the style of speaking. They do not understand, whom we give da'wah to do not understand the style of speaking. They do not understand Allah said, the Messenger ﷺ said, the companion said, Sheikh so-and-so said, etc., etc. They do not understand this type of terminology, nor its significance. So we should put ourselves in their shoes and be gentle with them. We should try to be conscious of the impression we are giving them. Let us try our level best to keep those 3 critical points in the back of our minds whenever we are in a discussion with somebody else. Don't act like you don't have time to talk to them, that you're just taking 3 or 4 minutes out of your busy day to talk to them and you don't have time for them. And if you don't have time for them, don't start a discussion. Reading the situation. When you find yourself in a situation, you have to read that situation in a way similar to the way you read a book. When you enter a room and find yourself in front of a group of people, or you go to a shopping center and you see somebody interested in Islam, you have to read that situation carefully before making any statements, meaning you have to be conscious of the unique elements of the situation and tailor your approach accordingly. We must be conscious of 2 main things. First, the environment, and second, the actual individual. Timing. When it comes to the environment, the first thing to be remembered is the timing. Finding the appropriate time. It's not always the right time just to butt in and start saying, you know, Islam is this, Christianity is that, the Bible says this, the Quran says that. You may be in an environment where you'll make the person embarrassed and he doesn't want to speak to you. Sometimes it's easier to talk to the person alone than it is in front of a group of people, especially if you're criticizing his religion or his way of life. Is it a suitable time to talk about this subject or not? The Prophet ﷺ used to select certain times to give his lectures. On one occasion, one of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's students came to him and said, "We love your lectures and sermons. Please give us more." As he only used to give 1 lecture a week, he replied, "I wish that I could give more. The only thing that prevents me is the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He used to take care of us. He used to take care of us in giving sermons by selecting a suitable time, so that we not become bored." From this incident, we can see that the Messenger ﷺ knew the characteristics of the called, but better than they knew themselves. People in their enthusiasm and excitement usually want more lectures in the beginning of any new program. However, the reality is that if you give too much or you speak for too long, they will eventually become bored. It is the nature of human beings to become lazy with time. An example of this is I teach a class daily. When my students the first classes when they come, they're usually 6 weeks long. The students typically will tell me they don't want to take a break time. They just want to go straight through and finish early and go home. I have to force them to take a break. Every 45 minutes we give them a 15-minute break. Within 1 week to 2 weeks, they don't complain about this break anymore. Actually, they want more breaks than the 15 minutes. They become lazy in their subjects. It's the same thing. Thus the common saying, familiarity breeds contempt. Yes, there will be a few who are keen and will remain enthusiastic during their sincerity and high level of commitment. However, in such cases, you have to consider the norm and not the exceptions. Whenever you're teaching a class, you don't teach to the highest knowledge, you teach to the lowest knowledge or the middle. Consequently, you have to consider our timing. We must ask ourselves, is this the right time? Am I giving them too much? In another hadith, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, among the signs of an individual's understanding of his religion is the length of his prayer and the shortness of his speech. Therefore, we have to think about the length of our discussion to ensure that it is not too long, and we also have time to think about the time we wish to engage in discussion, to ensure that it is not an inappropriate time. So read the environment. Look around you. If you are in a busy marketplace, is it a suitable time to talk about the reality of death? Will you get your point across concerning punishment of the grave, when everything around him is reminding him of the material world? Perhaps another topic would be more appropriate. Or if you need to talk about reality, then take him alone in a room and have that discussion. Next, consider the audience. The second principle governing the environment is the audience, or the people you are talking to. You certainly wouldn't want to go prepared to talk about Christianity and the whole room is full of Hindus, or Buddhists, or atheists. You must be prepared to talk to each and individual audience, and sometimes individual people, because the audience is mixed with all of these people. Are we talking to a group, or are we talking to an individual? There is a difference. Remember that when you're in a group of people, you cannot convince them. Look at the example of Hazbul Pareya, people of the village, mentioned in Surah Yasin. Allah Most High sent a message to the village, and village people rejected him. Then he sent another messenger, and they also rejected him. The scholars of Tafsir say that they imprisoned them and tortured them. So Allah sent a third messenger to support them against this group, but still they would not listen. Later, Almighty Allah said, a man came running from the farthest corner of the village saying, O my people, follow the messengers. Surah Yasin 36:20. Follow those who do not ask any reward from you, and they are rightly guided. Surah Yasin 36:21. And what is wrong with me that I do not worship the one who created me, and to him I return? Surah Yasin verse 22. The story continues with another person from the village who accepted the message, trying to convince the villagers. Although he used the logic and emotion to convince them, they remained unconvinced because they were a group. The scholars say that he was killed, and he has his reward with Allah Almighty. He said, if only my people knew that my Lord has forgiven me and put me among the honored. Surah Saba 34:46. If you really want to convince someone about something, you need to talk to them one-on-one, or maybe two. Greater than two, they become convinced by each other. Sometimes people are afraid to talk to you because he's with his friend. His friend finds him to be very high, and you're telling him this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you're bringing him down to a level that he does not want to be seen around his friends. So by taking them one-on-one, whereas if I told you in the past that you and I can talk, and then the other two people don't feel like they're connected. They're listening, mashallah, they're listening, but we're not putting them down, we're putting somebody else down. So if I'm talking to you and saying that the Bible says you should not eat pork, this man hears this, but I'm not telling him the Bible says you should not eat pork. Now he's no longer connected. He's still in the conversation, but he's not personal any longer. When you get more than two, they tend not to listen, especially if you go to a hospital or some of these places. Typically there's one or two people inside a group of 25. I like to call them the preachers or the ministers. They're usually somebody who's self-appointed. He thinks that he knows more than the other people about the Bible, and he's the one who's telling them, oh, you don't want to become Muslim. This guy is lying. He's not telling the truth. So sometimes it's better to do one-on-one, one-on-two. And if you find that the person doesn't want to talk to you, try another way. Try to bring one of your friends. Have a conversation close by him so that he can hear. As you will hear last week from Abdullah Ghaffar, that the person that he heard about Islam from was that way. He heard somebody speaking in a diner about Islam behind him, and he turned around and joined in the conversation and became Muslim from this. So it's sometimes the indirect is more valuable than the direct. You get the same reward. Don't worry about anything. I was going to cheat you out of anything. You're going to get the same reward. So if you just stop and think about that person, and as it says here, put yourself in his shoes. Do you want to be embarrassed? Do you want to be called out in front of a group of people? No, if you don't. He feels the same way. If you really want to commit something about something, you need to talk on it to them one-on-one or maybe two. Some people have went to church and been addressing a large audience about Tawheed. Now, if you can imagine one Muslim going to a church group, a large one, and you're in their building, you're in their world, and start to talk to them about Islam, they're not going to be very receptive. Even if there are people in the audience who want to know about Islam, they're not going to tell you, they're not going to show you. So yes, you have went and made da'wah, and you will get the reward for going and making da'wah. But you've really wasted your time. Unless you're invited. Now, to be invited is a different story. If the group invites you to come and talk to them, then that means the group is interested. If you go to a hospital and you're asked to come and talk about da'wah, and I tried to ask the group, did they force you to come here? I mean, most of the time I find that the management has forced the group to come and talk to me. And now all, however many there is, 25, 30 people, 10 people, they don't want to listen to me. They were forced to come. It's better to have one person who wants to listen than it is 25, 30 people that are angry and mad and don't want to listen to you. After the talk, people realized that their questions, they were not interested in Tawheed. This man spoke for an hour about Tawheed, and that's not the question they had. So he's lost most of the audience. No one asked any questions about Tawheed. Instead, all their questions focused on what Islam had to say about homosexuality. And in the course of the questions, he came to realize that he was in a homosexual church. And the members of the audience were mostly homosexuals and lesbians. They didn't care about only one God. They wanted to know what Islam thought about homosexuals. Consequently, the time was not appropriate for his subject, and his lecture was lost. He was giving the message of Tawheed, and they were interested in what Islam says about homosexuality. However, once he read the audience and found himself in a group of homosexuals, he told them about the punishment for homosexuality is death, and he informed them they are to be thrown off the highest mountain, which consequently is the same for Christianity as it is for Islam. You're supposed to kill both of them when you find them. It says in the Bible. If you find two homosexuals, you kill both of them, stone them to death. They are in a group, so it is likely they will not listen properly. Instead, he gave them a general answer, and after the talk and the answer session, he went to them and talked to them individually about purity, about relations with his wife, about the blessings of having a wife, or a spouse, or etc. As individuals, they listened for another hour, but as a group, they just wanted a quick answer and wanted to go home. They didn't want to hear what he had to say. So have to be careful about reading the situation, knowing your audience. If you just go and stand up and start talking, the only person interested in what you're saying is you. If you take the time in the beginning, like I told you before, to interview your audience. It just only takes a short interview. Who are you? Where you come from? What do you do? What's your background? You will find out what they want to know. Sometimes just asking a small question. Have you ever heard about Islam? Do you know what Islam is? From there you can find out short things. And then you can go on and give your speech. It doesn't do any good to talk about Tawheed if they want to know about what's the punishment for homosexuality. The third thing to look at is your location. For example, Mount Safa in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was used for announcements. So the Prophet ﷺ went there to make his point. He chose a particular location because he knew the people he was inviting to Islam. He knew their nature and characteristics, so he chose Mount Safa. He climbed up to the summit and addressed his people, saying, "O people of Quraysh, if I were to tell you that there was an army behind this hill, would you listen to me?" He used this location to make his point. As one calling Islam must choose the most suitable time and address to give an audience, he or she must choose the most suitable location. The location may be a public hall, a university auditorium, high school classroom, the beach, on the desert, or any place. One must choose the appropriate location for the type of message one intends to deliver. What may be said over lunch in a restaurant may not be suitable for a university auditorium, and vice versa. You're inside your class teaching about one subject and somebody wants to know about something else. It's not always suitable. If there's 30 or 40 people and you two are having a conversation about this, well, what about the other 29 people? So you have to tailor to the location. Choose the pace that you want to talk to people. People may not be comfortable talking in your office. You have to understand, in your office, you're the boss. They don't feel comfortable talking to the boss. You have to take them outside that. You have to make them feel comfortable. So sometimes by taking them to lunch, speaking as a human being, say, I'm not the boss now, I'm just having lunch, I'm just this guy who wants to eat this chicken and rice, who doesn't care about anything else. So sometimes you have to go outside the normal. If you're working in a hospital, you cannot talk to people in the hospital, especially if they work for you. They're not going to accept. They might accept it because they have to. They feel they have to. Take them out of this environment to where you can make them feel equal to you. Demographics. Almighty Allah said, "I did not send any messenger except that he spoke the language of his people to explain to them." One of the ways you can look at this is if you cannot speak the language of the person you're talking to, then you're pretty much wasting your time. If you're going to do this, at least have a translator and make sure it's somebody that you can trust. Don't just pick, if you're going to talk to Filipinos, don't just talk to any Filipino to translate for you. You may find out later that he's translating, but he's telling this group of Christians you're talking to that, oh, this guy is full of beans, he's telling you lies, don't listen to him. And he'll turn and smile to you and say, yes, yes, okay, and they accept. So make sure you can trust this person. Don't just take anybody to do it. Don't be in a rush to make dawah to somebody if you're not able to. There's great wisdom in this principle. In general, the best person to talk to people is one who shares a similar background with them. I, as an American, understand the American society and culture in general. Me, because I have a home and a wife and children in the Philippines, I understand the Filipino principle. I previously had a wife and children from Thailand, so I understand the language and the principles and the culture of Thailand. There are some common grounds for all people. We're all human beings. Choose these common grounds. Don't start talking to somebody from South Africa about his values and his morals when you don't know anything about it. He may be forced to do what he's doing because of where he lives. So try to make yourself equal with them. Try to understand their point. And if you know you're going to go talk to somebody from South Africa, spend a few minutes on the internet. It's free. Go on the internet, find about where he lives and general subjects. Their rugby team is very good. They won the World Cup how many years ago? These kind of things. Find things that you can be familiar with him. Take a little time. It's worth the effort. I guarantee you, if you was a person trying to sell a car to this person and you spent the time to find out about him and you had success, you would do all this. It's the same way with Islam. You're selling Islam. You're the diplomat. You're the person that's representing Islam. Take the time to understand this person. I know that I have limitations in my addressing, certainly. To certain American audiences especially. I feel more secure talking to non-Americans than I do others. Americans as a group for me are hard to talk to. They're very opinionated. They don't like to know that they're doing things wrong for me. It is better to get a reverted or converted Muslim from America to give certain talks. Sometimes you as a Muslim, even if you know everything about Islam, it's easier for you to use somebody like me who's a revert, because I know what's going on with them and what they want to hear. Although it is good to give dialogue to any and everybody, we should know our limitations. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. It's the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that if you don't know something, say, I don't know. But don't leave it there. Make the man feel like his question is important. Write it down and say, please, I will get an answer for you. You can try to get his mobile number, or you can give your mobile number. Say, please call me in a couple of days. Or find some way to contact him, so that the next time you see him, you can give him an answer to his question. It makes him feel like he's important. And he is important. You've spent the time to talk to him, he's important. If you find somebody else in the audience, if you're lucky, sometimes I can ask, does anybody know the answer to this question? And somebody will hold up their hand, and I try to make sure that what they said is correct, and I don't just accept anything. So it's important to answer people's questions. At times, some people would only feel comfortable to listen to certain subjects from somebody of the same background. Someone from the Philippines, or one who has visited Philippines and has intimate knowledge of their culture, can make their talks more efficient and relevant to a Filipino audience by giving local examples. For instance, I wrote a small paper, about 10 or 20 pages. It's the Islamic history of the Philippines. So when I say something, it's not something that I haven't studied, not something that I know about. I do know about the subject. I did some research and taken many opinions before I become to my opinion of the 10 pages. So I know about their background. Try to be familiar with the people you're talking to. Same from England, same from Germany. They have a greater impact on Brits and Germans respectively. Their impact may be far greater than a very knowledgeable foreigner, wherever you're from. There are 3 elements that we must keep in mind when giving dialogue. Islamic knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah is one element you may use to talk to somebody, but certainly don't use it if you don't have the knowledge. It would be silly or ludicrous for you to be quoting the Quran and your audience find out that your quotation was wrong. You've lost all credibility. Nobody wants to talk to you after that. In this case, it was better off not to say it. However, a great scholar, quoting Allah and His Messenger ﷺ, may not touch the heart of the person being called. Because knowledge, one needs a degree of eloquence. That means being able to speak. Some people, when they speak, it just, I don't know, it's like rubbing 2 pieces of sandpaper together. There's nothing personally against them, they don't have a good tongue. They can't talk. And it makes the people hearing feel bad, and they don't feel like they want to listen to them. However, a great scholar quoting Allah and His Messenger may not touch the heart of the person being called. Besides knowledge, one needs a degree of eloquence. Evidences and proofs are important, but for them to reach the audience, you need to have a good speaking manner. Even if you can quote the whole of Sahih al-Bukhari, you still may not be able to reach the person unless you can speak to them in an eloquent manner. The Prophet ﷺ was given Jawami al-Kalim, or concise, effective speech, to convey his message. However, even that is not enough. You also need to build relationships, and that is where it becomes important to get someone from the same background as the person being called. And even then, it doesn't always work. There are people during the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, his uncle for sure, that he talked to for a long time. It's his own family. His uncle knows he speaks the truth, he doesn't lie. He's known him since birth. He knows everything about Muhammad ﷺ, but he still did not become Muslim. So don't beat yourself up if people don't become Muslim. No matter what you say, if Allah didn't will it, it's not going to happen. Remember to only think about the reward. You're getting the reward for conveying the message to these people. That's it, nothing else. You got the reward, whether the person becomes Muslim or not. Education. The second point concerning an individual that must be considered is their level of education and understanding. You have to be careful at this time because you may be a person who has PhD or master's degree, and I know all of us have spoken to some people who keep... Somebody dropped their watch. We've all spoken to people who keep beating into us, oh, I'm a doctor. People don't need to hear that. If you're a doctor and you're speaking and you keep beating it into your audience, maybe they're all dishwashers or waiters in something, and you're making them feel inferior to you, and your message is lost. You have to find a way to bring your audience to your level. If you have to come down, you have to come down. The middle is the best place. They'll come up, you'll come down. Try to be equal to them. Don't try to beat your education at them. Think about their education. You may be talking on college level English, and they can only understand basic English. What good does it do for me to use words this long and they can only understand this long? So you have to think about the education of the group or person you're speaking to. You may quote things to a university graduate with the average laborer, and he would not understand. Complicated ideas and philosophical concepts like the Trinity and the discrepancies in the Bible manuscripts are suitable for discussion with people of limited education. But some people, especially Christians, don't even know the word Trinity. You may be beating the word Trinity to death, and an hour from now he might say, "What is Trinity?" You wasted an hour. You don't know what you're talking about. But if you say Father, Son, Holy Ghost, yes, I know what that is. And then you can say, that's what Trinity means. But that should have been in the beginning, not in the end. Now you have to tell him the definition. The other words you used in the whole hour, throw it in the garbage. You wasted his time. He doesn't know what you're talking about. So think about the person you're talking about. Think about the person you're talking to. Try to come down to a level that he can understand. A perfect example of that is Dhul Qarnayn, mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf. Dhul Qarnayn went to 3 groups of people. One group of people who were a strong nation. According to the scholars, he conquered and made very clear statements regarding them. He said, "I will punish whoever does wrong and is unjust, and I will give a reward to whoever believes in and does righteous deeds." He talked to them in a precise, law-giving manner, because they were a civilized nation and a strong community. But when he went to the other side of the world, he met a group of people who couldn't understand what Dhul Qarnayn was saying. And he could barely understand what they were saying. A completely different group of people. Did Dhul Qarnayn tell them either believe or suffer for punishment? No, he saw that these people were a mild people. Some scholars say they were lazy because they were not able to build a wall to prevent Gog and Magog, and they had to ask Dhul Qarnayn to do it. Perhaps they were materialistic people, as they offered Dhul Qarnayn money. Or perhaps they were ignorant of advanced methods of construction, and were not educated in the ways of great civilizations. They were used to paying other people to do jobs for them. So what did Dhul Qarnayn do with them? He told them that he did not want their money. Instead, he instructed them to help them do the job. This was not because he needed their help, as he had an army with him, but because he wanted to educate them about hard work. He wanted to teach them about what it means to take matters into your own hands, to defend yourselves. So he dealt with them in a different manner, and he dealt with the first nation. Consequently, you have to look at the level of education and understanding of people you're talking to and deal with them accordingly. Even some people who have an education, even though they have a certificate, you find a lot of times they're very unintelligent. How they got their education, I don't know. How they got their diploma, I don't know. It's not my business. But you have to speak to them personally, one-on-one, and find out what their level of education is. Maybe the only thing they know about is their job. You ask them any other subject and they don't know nothing about it. That's all they know is their job. So you have to be familiar with it. You have to be able to come to a common ground to talk to them. Next, we're going to talk about misconceptions, because there are a lot of misconceptions. In their world, in our world, some people have misconceptions about everything. Some people only listen to what we call gossip. I have some of these people that I work with. Every 5 minutes they come saying, this person said that. And they want you to say something so they can go to somebody else and say, oh, he said this about that. So these are misconceptions. They have nothing to do with what the subject is they're talking about. But they just want to carry this. They're like mail carriers. They just want to carry this back and forth. And they don't really know anything hard and fast about anything other than what he said, she said, we said, they said. It makes many misconceptions. Preconceived ideas, that means somebody already has an idea about you. As soon as you say, I'm a Muslim, right away a whole group of things pops into his mind. Usually the first thing is terrorist. Second thing is, oh, he's a wife beater, he doesn't treat women well. Third, oh, he's got a harem. A harem means he has more than one wife. He rides camels, he lives in the desert in a tent. Oh, they got all kinds of crazy misconceptions about it. Carries a big knife, carries a sword. They have many, many misconceptions. The moment you say you're a Muslim, they want to know, well, if you're an American, you say you're a Muslim, you say, well, who brainwashed you? You're a traitor. Did you become a Saudi citizen? Nothing has anything to do with Islam. But they have what's called preconceived ideas and misconceptions. Of course, that can only be determined if we take the time and allow them to express their thoughts. If you don't allow them to say about these predetermined misconceptions, you'll never know what they are. You'll keep talking about something, and in the back of his mind, these predetermined ideas are there. You can't get rid of them. He's going to keep going over them in his head. The scenario just keeps going over and over, like running a movie, over and over and over and over again. But if you talk to him and clear up these misconceptions, sometimes it's something simple. I was lucky one time. I was giving it wasn't even giving a speaker in a lecture. It was just me and one of the guys speaking. He had a group of people with him, but it was just me and one of the group. And he was another American. And as we were talking, it was in the first few minutes, well, how are you? What's your name? Who are you? How's this? He asked me what my religion is. I said, I'm a Muslim. And he said, oh. And as soon as he said, oh, you could see in his mind what he was thinking. And I said, well, why did you say, oh? He says, oh, because we were told in America that all Muslims are terrorists. I said, do you think about what you just said? And he said, what do you mean? I said, brother, there's 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. He said, yes. I said, there's only 5 billion people in the world. He said, yes. I said, if 1.5 billion people are all terrorists, what's going to happen to the other 3.5 billion tomorrow? I said, it wouldn't take 5 minutes for 1.5 billion terrorists to kill the other 3.5 million, would it? He said, yes. I said, we're not all terrorists. Just like not all Americans are crazy, they're not all rich, they're not all this, they're not all that, they just come from America. And he stopped for a few minutes and he thought, he says, oh, he says, I see what you mean. He said, you're right. I said, it's a very small group of people who happen to be Muslim. It's not because they're Muslim they're terrorists. It's the other way around. So stop and think about what this... But the idea is that you have to address these issues. You can't just leave them there to grow inside his mind. You have to address them. You can't forget about them. If you don't address them now, you'll be addressing them later. And all of that time in between is wasted. Because until he gets rid of those misconceptions and preconceived ideas, he's not listening to you. If we listen first and try to teach them, once we've heard a misconception, we have to decide whether to spend a lot of time or a little bit of time trying to correct the misconceptions. Basically, all you can do is tell them the truth and let them make up their own mind. For example, raising the sun from the west. This is a reference to the story of Prophet Abraham when he went to the king and said, my Lord is the one who gives life and causes death. And the king said, I can give life and cause death. Obviously, the king had a misunderstanding about the meaning of giving life and causing death. It's a misconception. What did Abraham do? Did he spend time trying to explain to the king the correct meaning? No, instead he chose another way. He challenged him, saying, "Indeed, Allah brings the sun from the east. Raise the sun from the west." And the disbeliever was dumbfounded. He knows he cannot raise the sun from the west. So sometimes we do what's called similitude. He used this example, I never used another example to show that his example was wrong. I can give you another example. Recently there was a man who was giving a speech to a group of Muslims. He asked the audience, do all Muslims have to grow a beard? What's the answer? I'm asking you guys, do all Muslims have to grow a beard?
Yes.
The answer is no. Only the men. Only the men.
Of course.
But you can see the misconception. All the Muslims have to grow a beard. Of course, the women do not. The other thing was that he told a man in the audience, he says, he asked the audience, because the audience was confused about the question still, he says, "Can you grow your beard?" And the man said yes. He says, "Okay, go ahead, grow your beard. I want to see it, but could you hurry? I only have a few minutes." The point he was making was that you don't grow your beard, Allah does. Allah causes your beard to grow. It's a misconception that I'm the one who grows this. I don't grow this. I just don't cut it. Allah is the one who makes it grow. I just leave it alone. As the Hadith says, leave it alone. But this is the way he was proving his point about misconception, that people grow their beards. They do not. Allah grows it. You leave it alone. But he used these examples to show to the people about their misconceptions and straighten out their minds. So you don't have to always directly slam and hurt the people's feelings. You can do it in another way, and they will accept it. Certainly this man could not cause life, and he could cause not. He may be the instrument that Allah uses to stop somebody's life, and he may be the instrument Allah uses to make life start. But he did not do it, Allah did. And this was the point that Abraham was making. He was stupefied and completely unable to respond. Similarly, rather than stopping to explain each and every time a misconception is raised, and becoming so bogged in defense of explanations, because sometimes you go to speak, you find you spend your whole hour or 2 hours just defending Islam. People say, what about this? What about that? What about this? Why can he marry 4 wives and I can't have 4 husbands? You'll spend all night trying to defend this. So sometimes if you give these examples in your speech, you can save. And by knowing what the people are interested in, you can do this when you speak. So save yourself some time and some effort. You wasted a week putting this speech together. If you just do a little work ahead of time and find out what these people are like, then when you give your speech, it's short and it's fast and it's what they need to know. And alhamdulillah, it's a lot easier for you. The misconceptions concerning polygamy in Islam, or 4 husbands, which is what they call polygamy, are called monogamous countries of the West. Mostly these countries, their law, by law, you're only allowed to marry 1 person. It has nothing to do with their book. In their books, there's no limit to any of them. I've never seen any of the books that says they have a limit of how many wives we can marry as their citizens. For me, when they ask me this question, I always like to say, alhamdulillah, thanks be to God, I can only marry 4. And it takes the edge off the subject. Usually the audience will all laugh. Oh, he's glad he can only marry 4. I said, because your religion, there is no limit. I could not stand, most of the time, 1 is too much for me. Alhamdulillah, we can only marry 4. So something like this will take the edge off and change the misconception. Furthermore, it may be noted that Islam is the only religion whose scriptures explicitly say to marry only 1 wife. It does say, marry only 1 wife. And if you have to, you can marry another. But we have to be fair in this. This is not as easy as it sounds. I know most people think when you're talking about marrying more than 1 wife, oh, it sounds like heaven. Oh, no more problems, 1 wife. I guarantee you marry 4 and you get 4 times the headache. It's extremely difficult. Every single thing that you buy for one woman, you have to buy for another. And if you have four, that's 4 wives. Well, I bought one piece of gold for this woman for 1,000 riyals, now I got to spend 3,000 more. Now I got to have 4,000. Oh, it's extremely difficult. It's very, very hard. And that's why he said, you should be fair and treat them fair, but you will never be able to. You will always be liking one more than the other, although you shouldn't. You're not supposed to. So it's extremely difficult. And it's not a common practice. Most of the Muslims I know only have one wife. The statement often stupefies the detractors as neither the Bible, Torah, nor Gospel, nor do the Hindu scriptures, the Vedas, and I can't say this word, Upanishads, is that close? The Gita, etc., contain such a statement. Instead, their scriptures encourage unrestricted polygamy. On such occasion, it is important to read the circumstances accurately, to see where the discussion is going, whether there is a case of honest misunderstandings which need to be cleared, or deliberate misconceptions being thrown out to disable the caller. Sometimes when people are talking to you, they're doing this on purpose. There are people in the audience who only want to distract from Islam, and they will say things hoping to throw you off, hoping to get you in another direction away from your main speech, and to disrupt. That's all they want to do, is disrupt the audience. You're there for no other reason. Be prepared. If you're going to speak in large groups, it's easier to do one-on-one or two-on-one. You get farther than that, you're opening yourself up for a whole different. And if you become well-known like Ahmed Deedat, they followed him everywhere he went. I know you've seen in his videos where there was always the same 5 or 6 people always trying to take away from what he was saying. So if you're going to do this, you have to be prepared for this. Choose your approach. Choice of subject. Next we have to choose our approach. After reading a situation carefully and correctly, you must know how to choose the subject. What are you going to talk about? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told Ibn Jabal, you are coming to a people from Al-Kitab. So the first thing you should invite them to is Tawheed. So people of the book, you should first invite them to Tawheed. This is the first you should use for every subject, no matter what. Invite them to Tawheed. Show them about the oneness of Allah in Islam. You have the best reference right there from the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ about Tawheed. Make sure that's straight with them. And then show in their book, no matter what religion they are, how it says the same thing. Their book is messed up. Their religion is wrong. They have many gods, or 3 gods, or whatever. Show them what they're doing is wrong, and how that was not what their messenger or their prophet was sent to tell them. Show them that Islam is the only religion left that is showing to worship only one God, and that Muhammad was a messenger of God, and all of the prophets before him, the same. You have to convey this to your audience. Know how. It doesn't matter how long it takes. As I told you, one time I went 52 times to one group of people, and on the 53rd time, they all became Muslim. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Some people take 20 years, some people take 40 years. I know people that have walked into the Dawah Center, said, I've been in this country 40 years, and nobody's ever told me about Islam. What is Islam? He's been working here in Saudi Arabia for 40 years, and he doesn't know what Islam is. Teach them about the oneness of Allah and the teachings of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's now 10 minutes till. It's time for questions. Anybody have any questions? Any questions today? You speak to anybody this week?
Actually, I'm trying to speak, but most of the time they just want to stay away from me. There is something wrong with me, I'm sure, because maybe I'm in hurry. Want them
You're
to
impatient,
accept
or
I think, because whenever I talk, I just talk on the main point about Islam.
where are the people coming from that you're talking to?
They are mostly janitor or cleaners or
From one particular country, or?
one is from Nepal, and the rest of them are from Philippines.
Men or women?
Men.
It's a local company here.
Yes.
Have you tried to invite somebody else that speaks their language, or?
Actually, most of the time they are busy. They will just come to me to bring coffee or tea or a glass of water, and I will just grab them during that time.
They're uncomfortable
Yes.
because they consider you to be above them.
Yes.
Okay, is there a way that you can go to them?
So I try to find out their residence.
Not necessarily. They're uncomfortable in their residence. You go to their residence, they don't feel comfortable. They're doing things they don't want you to know about. Trust me. All of them are doing things they don't want you to know about. The first thing they see is all Muslims are mutawas, or religious police. They don't understand that we know they're doing these things already. They think they're hiding. So going to the residence won't help unless you're invited by them. You're invited, that's different. But you show up at the door and knock on the door, they're right away in defense. But they must have an office or something in your building. A place where is neutral.
There is.
I would try to find someplace neutral.
Okay.
Because they don't feel comfortable in your office. They feel like you're above them. It's the old story. They want you to come down to their level. And you can, it's easy. It's not.
Yes.
Maybe sometime you can buy them breakfast. We try that a lot. We buy them breakfast or lunch. And so we're all in the same setting. And even then, don't talk to them directly. Especially if there's more than one of them. But take a friend with you. And make sure the friend can speak some language they understand. And talk to him. Oh, how long have you been Muslim? The same questions that we asked last week and the weeks before. It's the same questions. They will relate to him even if they don't relate to you. The two of you should talk in advance. You should tell him what I want these guys to understand about Tawheed, Prophet Muhammad. And ask him what his religion was before, and make sure that his religion is the same as theirs. So they can feel like they're on level ground and that they have something in common. Try something like this. You have to be inventive. You can't just approach everybody straight. They will run in all directions.
I will follow the same.
Either that or find somebody that they respect. Everybody respects somebody. But it has to be somebody outside from your organization. There's many tricks you can use. Especially with Filipinos.
I think inviting them for dinner or lunch, or buy them a dinner or lunch, that will be better.
In their own place. Don't ask them to come somewhere because they won't. Most of them don't have a way to come to start with. But if you will buy lunch and take it to the place where they are, where they eat, they will eat. They'll be happy. They'll be...
I'll do the same.
And you'll have to get some time from the company you work for to say, please give me 1 hour to talk to these people. When they don't have to do anything, when they don't. And then you can bring people, like you could bring, for the Filipinos, me and my wife could come and speak, because she speaks the language well. She knows a lot about dialogue that I have taught her, so. Neutral. So they only want to become Muslim. We don't care how they get there. You still get the same reward. But if you just keep pushing at them, it's kind of like a flood coming at you. You're just going to get out of the way. They will avoid you. Any other questions?
Kind of going off of his question, the importance of establishing a rapport with somebody who you're trying to give dawah to, there's the, sometimes you might be on a bus, for example, and you just have that one opportunity with the guy next to you. It's a very different situation than the brother here who, he knows these people, he sees them all the time. So could you just kind of maybe touch on that, establishing a rapport, a relationship with the people?
Common ground, that's what he's talking about. You have to have common ground with the person you're talking to. If the only common ground is you work for the same company, that's not enough, because he sees you above him. Filipinos especially don't feel comfortable with, they feel comfortable around Americans. Some Saudis they feel comfortable around, and if they have friends who are Indians or others, they will feel comfortable with them. But if they think somebody is basically their boss, they don't feel comfortable for some topics. They feel like they're being forced. And you have to understand their point. They were all forced to become Christian. They had no choice. They were all Muslims 100%. They were given a choice, become Muslim or off with your head. And now they're all Christian. And they don't like to hear this, and you can understand it. So you have to put yourself in their shoes. Instead of beating this towards them, you have to sell them a car. It's basically what he's saying.
I have one guy, he's from Nepal, he's Hindu. And we have 4 or 5 times conversation about Islam and about their religion. And he really accepted that Islam is the best religion. There is only one God and it's very clean religion than Hinduism. And I asked him about so many things. And he accepted that Islam is the best religion. Then I asked him that, so what stops you to accept Islam? Because he was in Saudi Arabia, then he went to Qatar, he came back in Saudi Arabia, and he knows the culture. But he said, no, I cannot accept Islam. I said, why? He said, no, my community in Nepal, Hindus community, they will kill me.
Tell them don't tell anybody.
They will not accept me in their community anymore. So I cannot accept Islam.
There's a lot of things to tell him. First of all, tell him don't tell anybody. He doesn't have to tell anybody. There's a lot of people who've kept their religion hidden for him. And Allah even gives you this permission. Second of all, tell him that anything that he gives up for the sake of Allah, Allah is going to give him something 10 times better. Whatever he lost, He's going to give him 10 times better. And thirdly, make sure you remind him that once you know this is the truth, and you have said it with your own mouth, this is the truth, and you don't accept it, Allah has promised to put you in the hellfire. So you may enjoy your time here, but the next life is going to be eternal misery. Because you know the truth, you don't accept it. You have to remind him. You're lucky if he can speak to you, because most of the times I can't speak to the Nepalis. I don't know what language they speak.
Actually, we are speaking in the same language. And I am from Pakistan, he is from Nepal. So he can speak Hindi a little bit, which is same as Urdu.
Yes.
And
Alhamdulillah, you're lucky, because not very many people can talk to them. Any more questions? No? Nothing? Okay, thank you very much for coming. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.